morning. We are here on the factory floor this morning of Blue Origin, and we are here with Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, also, of course, founder of Amazon. It is great to see you. This is remarkable, by the way, just the scale of it. We've been talking about it all morning, but of all the people that we could talk to about everything that's going on in the country right now, in the economy, AI, jobs, space, we want to talk to you. And there is so much to talk about. We're going to touch on that, policy, politics, and so much more. But one of the topics that I thought we should talk about, and maybe even start with, is these days it feels almost impossible to pick up a newspaper without reading a headline about wealth in America, about the billionaire class, about wealth inequality and policy and everything else. And it's taken a uniquely critical turn, I think. And I'm so curious, before we even get into everything else, what you think about that right now.
Well, first of all, Andrew, I'm glad you're asking the question. I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's an important one to discuss because I see the same thing you do. You know, you see it in a bunch of headlines, you see it in a bunch of places, and I have been thinking about like what is driving this? It does seem different from 10 years ago, and I think what's going on is that it's kind of a tale of two economies. So you have a bunch of people in this country who are doing really well, but you also have a bunch of people in this country who are struggling.
Okay.
Struggling to pay rent, groceries, and so what's happening here is politicians are using the kind of age-old technique. So there's this tale of two economies, and they're using this age-old technique of picking a villain and pointing fingers. But the problem is that doesn't solve anything. And so, like, if you want to help the group of people who are struggling, you have to figure out real root causes and solutions, and that takes skill. It's like the way if we have a problem at Amazon, the way we would fix it is we would go in and we'd do the 5 whys and we'd try to get to a root cause. We'd try to find a root fix, and then when we fix it at the root, you're fixing it forever. It's a real solution. And what we don't do, because it doesn't work, is just point fingers and blame people. It might feel good for 10 seconds, but doesn't accomplish anything. And so what could you really do? So, like,
do you have a plan?
I have some ideas. I have some places to start. So, I started thinking about this and doing some research. A nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year pays more than $12,000 a year in taxes. Does that really make sense? So people talk about, making the tax system more progressive. How about we start by having the nurse in Queens not pay taxes? Why is a nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year paying more than $1,000 a month in taxes? That's $1,000 a month that could help with rent or groceries or anything. And so, and by the way, do you know what that all adds up to? The bottom half of income earners in this country pay only 3% of the taxes. It's only 3%. We can find 3%. So we don't have, it's a small amount of money for the government, that. And really, and the more I thought about it, to me, it's kind of absurd that we're doing this. We shouldn't be asking this nurse in Queens to send money to Washington. They should be sending her an apology. It really makes no sense.
Okay, but then on the...
All right, now I'm going to rebuttal that now. Now, that's just $1,000 a month. So if she's getting paid $75,000 a year, and it's $1,000 a month, her take home is like $63,000 from being a nurse. That's just taxes, bro. And I like what he said. He's like, well, he did say we could find 3% somewhere else. I'll tell you where we're going to sign the 3%. We're going to tax his ass. Yeah. Tax the rich. That's how we're going to find the 3%, because if you're not taxing somebody making $75,000 a year, which, okay, cool, that would benefit an individual like I. But let's tax his ass more. Let's tax you the 3%, or tax the rich people that, and I guess that's probably where he's getting at. And I hope he's not playing this type of role, because, I hate that certain billionaires, they get the money, avoid taxes, and then when they get the money and they already hit the money, now they want to tax the rest of the billionaires. Yes. So if that's his solution, to not tax the nurse because she's a nurse and give her an apology, it's just $1,000 a month for taxes. That's a month. She's probably making like $7,000. They're taxing $1,000, which is just taxes. But what does that taxes go to? It goes to local. You know what I'm saying? It goes to state and it goes to federal. So those, those taxes are done for some reason. Now, like I said, it would benefit a person like me and also the nursing field to not be taxed. You know what I mean? So I can't say I'm a super against it because it will benefit me like me, but I'm not thinking about me in this aspect. I'm thinking about where the money's going. Of course, we don't have a say what Washington's doing with the money, but then again, we do need the money to be taxed in a way, I guess, right? It's like we're paying for protection in a way. That's how I look at it with the tax system, right? They're but then again, they're using that money for certain things. Now, for his aspect, okay, it's just 3%. If that part of the economy is only paying 3%, maybe then we tax the rich more then. And I think that's where he's getting at. My only problem about that is that he wasn't like that when he was getting the money. By this time, he probably hid the money up. He doesn't own majority stake of Amazon anymore. So he's now saying to tax the rich after hiding his wealth. You know what I mean? I just don't agree with that accept. And that's been going on with a lot of millionaires and billionaires over the time. So let's keep it going.
The other end, the question is, should you be paying higher taxes to pay for the 3% component part of this?
Just like I said,
is going to need to be paid for, if not more than that, given the debts we have.
It's certainly a perfectly valid policy debate to say, do we want an even more progressive tax system? So, the kind of the line that gets quoted all the time is, the wealthy should pay their fair share.
Right.
And we can argue about what the fair share is. That's a policy debate. That's okay. But the vilification is the thing that's just the distraction. And by the way, if you really are being honest about it, we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We already have the most progressive tax system in the world. The top 1% of taxpayers pay 40% of all the tax revenue. The bottom half pay only 3%. We have already, and I think it should be 0. I don't think it should be 3%. Right. I think it should be 0. So we'd be making it more progressive that way. We actually have a spending problem, and that's a skills issue. I mean, let me give you an example. The New York City school system.
Right.
They spend.
He didn't answer the question. Look, he said it's a policy thing. Look, he really should say yes. It should be a yes or no situation. Should we tax the rich more due to the fact that we're not taxing the lower 1% anything? So if we're not taxing the nurses, anyone making under $100,000 so we can get the 3% of income, should we start taxing? Because you think it's like a company. You think we're just going to lose money. And that's how you got to think about it. And it would benefit me if they went to zero taxes. But you think they're just going to be like, nope, let's just lose money. No, that's not how the government works. They want that money from somewhere. So, but the thing is with it is, even if he's not advocating for taxing the rich more either. So that's the problem I'm having with Jeff Bezos. So you're telling the government just to not take taxes from the people that are making around this much money and less, just because they shouldn't do it. He don't run his business like that. So it's kind of crazy to advise the government to run it like that. On top of that, you should pay more taxes then in that case. So you can supplement the government, or you're just saying the government shouldn't charge them much and leave yours. Is that the problem is with the billionaires? They're going to find the loopholes anyway. The billionaires are going to find the loopholes anyway and get through it anyway. So if they decide to not tax the little people and force tax the rich people or the billionaires, they're going to find that loophole to get out of it anyway. So, but he's not even advocating for that.
$44,000 per student. $44,000. That's 30% more per student than other big cities like Chicago, LA, and Boston. And it's 3 times more than Miami and Houston. And by the way, New York City doesn't get better outcomes. So listen, let me just say, if we ran Amazon the way New York City runs their school system, your packages would take 6 weeks to arrive. We'd have to charge you a $100 delivery fee. And then when the package did finally arrive, it'd have the wrong item in it anyway. We can't, that's a skills issue, Andrew. It's not about, it's just competence.
That's kind of weird. To hear Jeff
the nurse in Queens.
To hear Jeff Bezos speak on this is kind of weird. It's as if he doesn't know the numbers, right? He's saying it's a conversation. The conversation is what you just said, brother. You said we shouldn't charge people. If she's a nurse, she's making $75,000 a year. We should not charge her $1,000 a month for taxes. So where do we get that 3% for? We get it from the rich, the billionaires that just advertise us not taxing the people, the littler people, 3%. The 3% of people do not tax them. I think he's confusing this. I don't think he's the one running his numbers. Let's just say this. This is my perception. This is AngeloSavage perception of the situation. I don't think Jeff Bezos is running his own numbers. I think somebody's running his numbers. That's why he can say all this. Because if he's not advocating for billionaires to pay more taxes, and he's advocating for the lower 20% of people to not be taxed, then where does the money come from, bro? You think the government just gonna take a loss? They gotta supplement it from somewhere. That's how I look at it, man. I don't know. Maybe Jeff Bezos, maybe his accountant's doing the numbers and he's just talking. But we know what's really going on in the industry. That being said, y'all tell me what y'all think about this in the comments section. It's your boy AngeloSavage. We're gonna go on. This is the Savage Report. Peace. Let's get it.